He was sure he knew his wife. 23 years of marriage, children, holidays, family trips. All of it was supposed to be an unshakable foundation. But on one seemingly ordinary day, he discovered that behind the cozy breakfasts and "I love yous" hid betrayal, lies, and something far more dangerous. He didn't cause a scene. He didn't shout. He turned on the cameras, set digital traps, pretended to be broken, and began the hunt. What he would uncover wouldn't just destroy his family, it would expose a conspiracy where the lovers were only the tip of the iceberg. His path of revenge would be cold, precise, almost scientific. But the most terrifying part, he'd start to enjoy it. Because when everything you love collapses, the question is no longer about forgiveness. The question is, who falls first? Greetings, my dear viewer. Please tell me which city and country you're watching this video from. Maybe you're watching me from a small town or a gigantic metropolis. Write about it. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. It will make me very happy. Let's get started. It all started on what appeared to be a perfectly normal Wednesday. The steady, familiar rhythm of life I had grown to depend on was suddenly exposed for what it truly was, a fragile illusion hiding fractures I'd been too blind to see. I arrived home earlier than usual that day and immediately heard Maris's footsteps above me. Hoping to surprise her, I headed up the stairs, but as I approached our bedroom, her voice floated through the door, which was left ajar. "Yeah, baby. Today was incredible. I loved every minute," she said, her voice brimming with a warmth I'd never heard her use when talking about her job. Compelled by a gnawing curiosity, I edged closer. The door wasn't fully shut, and though I hated myself for it, I peeked inside. There stood Maris, half undressed, her phone pressed to her ear. As she let her skirt fall in a heap around her ankles, I spotted the black lace lingerie she wore. Lingerie that was entirely unfamiliar. I was just about to step in when her next words rooted me to the floor. "Okay," she said sweetly. "I have to go. He'll be home soon. Talk to you tomorrow, handsome." With that, she ended the call, peeled off her blouse, and revealed a matching black bra I'd never seen before. As she moved toward the bathroom to start her shower, she paused in front of the mirror. She adjusted her appearance, as anyone might. From where I stood, hidden in the shadows, I could see her clearly. And what I saw made my blood run cold. A deep bruise blemished the side of her breast. A bruise I knew for certain I hadn't put there. Maris caught sight of it too, and immediately stiffened. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath. "Gotta cover that up." The sound of the shower sputtering to life filled the room, but I remained frozen, my whole body trembling, as if the ground itself had tilted beneath me. My name is Daniel Anderson. Maris and I have been married for 23 years. We have 2 children, Jasmine, 19, and Travis, 18. Maris works part-time at the nearby Air National Guard base, while I'm a chemical engineer. Up until that dreadful night, I truly believed we had a good marriage, one others might even have envied. It was now brutally clear just how wrong I'd been. Forcing myself to stay calm, I stepped quietly into the bedroom and grabbed her phone, desperate to see who she had been speaking with. It was locked. We'd never had passwords before. It hit me then how long it had been since I had even glanced at her phone, let alone touched it. Her blouse lay rumpled on the bed, and when I leaned in, I caught a whiff of shaving cream, a brand I didn't recognize. That was the moment when everything inside me broke. I stormed into the kitchen, grabbed one of my old DVR units, sealed the unfamiliar lingerie in a plastic bag, and hid it away in the garage. I tucked the DVR discreetly among my ties, carefully positioning it to capture everything without being seen. Returning downstairs, I noticed the faint glow from her laptop on the kitchen counter. I tried to access her email, but it too was locked with a password. Another slap in the face. For years, we had never bothered with such things. We trusted each other enough not to need them. Shaken but thinking clearly, I realized confronting her without hard proof would be a mistake. I needed evidence. I called her while she was still showering. "Hey, babe," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Work's a nightmare tonight. I'm grabbing dinner out. I needed time to figure out what to do next." After securing the small amount of evidence I had, I found myself at a local dive bar. It was a rundown place, but it was quiet, which suited me. Behind the bar, a new bartender named Melissa poured my gin and tonic. She was warm, easy to talk to, and told me she was a single mom trying to get by. Talking with her gave me a brief moment of peace, a short break from the turmoil ripping me apart. Eventually, around 11, I headed home. The house was dark and silent. I slipped into my robe as Maris stirred beneath the covers. "You're late," she mumbled sleepily. "Yeah," I said softly. "Rough night. Maybe I'll make it up to you if you're feeling lonely." She sighed and rolled away from me. "Too tired. Maybe later this week." "Deal." "Sleep tight," I whispered, even though she was already half asleep. I retrieved the DVR and reviewed the footage. After her shower, she had gone straight to the mirror again, scrutinizing the bruise. Then she had changed into flannel pajamas, a strange choice for someone who usually preferred sleeping naked. I saved the footage, wiped all traces of the device's setup, and then nudged the thermostat up by 4 degrees. I wanted to see if she would keep those heavy pajamas on if the house got warmer than usual. The following morning, I slipped out early, avoiding any conversation. I called work to say I'd be coming in late and immediately phoned my oldest friend, Gavin. Gavin had lived through the nightmare of catching his wife cheating. I needed someone who could understand. "Gavin," I said the moment he answered, "I think Maris is cheating. I need your help." "Jesus, Daniel," he replied, his voice thick with sympathy. "Get over here. We'll work something out." An hour later, I left Gavin's house with a solid plan and 5 digital recorders identical to the ones he had used during his own ordeal. Back home, I quietly planted 4 of the devices throughout the house, saving one for Maris's car. While rummaging through her closet, I stumbled upon clothes I'd never seen before, skimpy, flashy outfits that had no place at her workplace. In a hidden drawer, I found ripped lingerie, not worn thin by use, but torn apart, violently, like someone had ripped it off in the heat of passion. The sight of it made my stomach churn with dread. Later that afternoon, I left her a voicemail. "Hey babe, swamped at work, gonna be late tonight." That evening, after slipping the final recorder into her car, I waited until she fell into a deep sleep before combing through the recordings. So far, there was nothing incriminating, but I knew better than to expect immediate results. This was going to take patience. Sunday morning, after breakfast with the kids, I disconnected the Wi-Fi and scribbled a quick note for her on the counter. Breakfasts in the microwave, out cleaning the yard. 2 hours passed before she stormed outside, frustration etched across her features. "Daniel, the Wi-Fi's dead." Back inside, I pretended to troubleshoot while she hovered anxiously nearby. The second she turned her back, I swiftly installed a keylogger to record her emails, passwords, and screen activity. With the setup complete, I reconnected the internet. "Good as new," I told her, pulling up a web page to show it was working. "But your hard drive's sluggish. Hit this button later tonight. It'll run a cleanup." Her face lit up. "Thanks, big guy. How can I repay you?" I laughed. "Maybe wash my car?" Her smile faltered. Not the answer she was hoping for. I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek and walked off, reminding myself to stay composed. I needed to act normal until the evidence was irrefutable. That evening, we all settled on the couch to watch a movie with the kids. Maris was more touchy than usual, snuggling close, flirting, clearly trying to spark something. Midway through the movie, I excused myself for a drink and discreetly pocketed one of her sleeping pills, knowing it usually knocked me out within 45 minutes. After returning to the couch, it took about 15 minutes before she nudged me. "Stay up with me," she whispered. I stretched, faking a huge yawn. I'm wiped, heading to bed. She looked crushed, especially when the kids begged to watch another movie. I slipped away to the bedroom, popped the pill, and passed out hard, oblivious to the chaos coming the next day. Sunday was supposed to be my sleep-in day, but by 5 a.m., I was wide awake, anxiety gnawing at my gut. The idea of facing Maris made my stomach churn. There was no way I could fake the usual morning cuddles. I carefully disabled her alarm clock, crept downstairs, and booted up my laptop. I knew I had to be careful. Avoiding her too much would look suspicious. While the keylogger loaded, I secured the laptop with a password. Buried in a hidden folder were more than 500 emails. 2 immediately caught my eye, both from 6 months ago, from someone named Wesley Parker. His email address wasn't from a major provider. It came from a private domain. At first glance, the emails seemed work-related. Maybe a colleague, maybe more. I filtered her inbox by his name. That's when I saw it. A message from 4 months ago, titled, "Hey, beautiful." Nothing graphic, but definitely too personal for a work friend. Running a domain search led nowhere, just a basic registration with no active website. Sorting all her emails by date, I found 6 messages from Wesley, all sent yesterday. No wonder she guarded her laptop like her life depended on it. I opened the latest thread first. Maris had written to him, venting about bruises he'd left on her and how difficult it was hiding them from me. His reply was ice cold. "It happens. Get over it. Screw your husband." Just 14 minutes later, she'd responded, "I know you don't love your wife, but I love my husband. I never wanted to hurt him. It's already bad enough that I barely let him touch me lately. I'm not meeting you Wednesday." Her supposed love for me did nothing to dull the sting. In the following emails, he apologized, promised to be gentler, and suggested they sneak away together. He sounded like a desperate teenager. Her final message was a punch to the gut. "Glad you understand. I only travel with my husband. No Wednesday. The mark should fade in a week, then I'll focus on making it up to Daniel." Making it up to me? As if that could erase what she'd done. It was clear they'd been meeting up at a motel for at least 2 months. One message even revealed the location. Room 187, rented long-term by Wesley's company, right across from a bar I'd visited not long ago. Just then, a new notification popped up. Maris had sent a fresh email. "I can't go a week without you. Meet me Wednesday at 1 p.m. Be more careful this time." Wesley's response came back instantly. "You're amazing. I'll make sure it's perfect." That was it. I needed help. I forwarded everything to Gavin and headed to the kitchen to start breakfast. Around 9:30, Maris floated downstairs, stretching and smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. "Thanks for letting me sleep in," she said, kissing my cheek. "Fair's fair," I said with a strained smile. "I crashed pretty early last night." She wrapped her arms around me from behind, her lips grazing my ear. "Don't work too hard today, babe. I'll be needing you later tonight." I brushed off the advance. "Almost done outside," I said, stepping away. From the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of nervousness cross her face, quickly masked by another sweet smile when she realized I was looking. While tidying up the garage, my phone buzzed. It was Gavin. "Got a second?" "Yeah," I said, stepping out into the driveway. "What's up?" "I read the emails, man." "I'm really sorry. At least now I know," I muttered. "But it's not enough to hold up in court." "True," Gavin said. "But if you get photos of her walking into that motel, that's a different story." "Not good enough," I snapped. "I want proof they can't talk their way out of solid, irrefutable proof." Gavin let out a long sigh. "I know the guy who owns the motel. If I say it's an official investigation, he'll let us in without a problem." "Excellent," I replied. "Can you set up surveillance the way you did with your ex?" He nodded. "No problem. I'll use motion sensors, audio triggers, the works. The feeds will go to a nearby receiver. You can even monitor everything from your car, he added. Do it, I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. And find out all you can on Parker. I want every detail. We'll have everything up and running by Monday or Tuesday, Gavin assured me. For the first time in a while, I felt a faint sense of control returning. The rest of Sunday crawled by, quiet but tense. Strangely enough, I found myself yearning for some sort of closeness that night. Why not? I thought bitterly. Maybe Parker had tainted it, but I could reclaim it, on my terms. Later, tangled in the sheets, Maris nestled into me and whispered, "Daniel, I love you. You're all I need." I kissed her hair, tamping down a wave of anger. How could she say that? Going to shower, I muttered, sliding out of bed. Alone in the bathroom, my fury burst out, wild and sharp. Those weren't casual words. She knew exactly what she was saying. When I went back, she was asleep already, her breathing even. I slipped under the blanket, saying nothing, my anger simmering beneath the surface. Before daylight broke Monday, I was already out the door and on my way to Gavin's place. "I've got something," he said, ushering me in. "Parker isn't just seeing Maris, he's got women lined up," Gavin told me. "Always the same motel room. Thinks he's clever, but using the same spot over and over? Amateur move." My teeth clenched. "What else?" "The motel manager can't stand the guy," Gavin went on. "Says Parker treats the staff like dirt. He comes by a few times a week, but never before 11. Gavin gave a sly grin. "Ready to catch him in the act?" We loaded up the surveillance equipment and drove straight to the motel. Gavin introduced me as part of the investigative crew. The manager, Kyle, barely reacted. "Hate that jerk," Kyle grumbled, tossing us a key. "He's awful to everyone who works here." "Is it okay if we set up a receiver close by?" Gavin asked, glancing at a maintenance closet. Kyle nodded. "Nobody ever uses it. I'll get you in." Gavin called Parker's room. No answer. Good. We went up, knocked twice, and let ourselves in. The room was empty. I stood there for a second, staring at the messy bed, where my wife had cheated on me. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to move. After 2 tense hours, we had cameras and recorders hidden everywhere. As we packed up, something on the desk caught my eye, a docking station. "Look at this," I said to Gavin. "He's using a laptop here." Gavin examined it. "If he leaves it out when he goes for lunch, I can plant a tracker." "I'll stake out this place every day if I have to," I muttered. "But first, let's get a GPS on his car. No surprises." "Don't get sloppy," Gavin cautioned. "We'll get what we need, no mistakes." "Right," I agreed, exhaling. "Let's eat," he said. "My treat." "There's a decent bar across the street," Gavin suggested. "Good food, friendly staff. Works for me." We walked into the bar, which was nearly empty. A blonde woman behind the counter, drying glasses, saw Gavin and immediately brightened. She dropped her towel and rushed over, ignoring me at first. "Gavin!" she exclaimed, wrapping him in a hug. He smiled, hugging her back. "Melissa, you look better." She laughed, stepping away. "Not 100% yet," she said, "but getting there, thanks to you." Clearing my throat, I introduced myself. "Melissa, this is my friend Gavin." They both laughed. Melissa gave my arm a quick squeeze. "I liked you the moment you walked in," she said warmly. "And any friend of Gavin's is a friend of mine." I grinned. "He's a troublemaker, but he means well." She chuckled. "Maybe that's just how men are." As the afternoon wore on, Melissa kept coming over to chat. Little by little, I learned more about her. She was saving up for med school and planning to start in 5 months. Her determination was contagious. By 2 o'clock, the place had emptied out, leaving only the 3 of us. Melissa glanced around the space and shrugged lightly. "It's always empty in here during daylight hours," she remarked. "Tips are practically non-existent, but at least I can get some studying done. Chatting with you all helps pass the time, too." We spent the next hour swapping stories and keeping things upbeat. until a shadow crossed Melissa's features. She fixed her gaze on Gavin and, in a gentle voice, said, "Let me be the one to explain." Gavin gave her a solemn nod, and she turned her attention to me, her expression growing serious and vulnerable. "If we're truly friends," Melissa said, "you deserve honesty from me. Maybe after you hear what I have to say, you'll want nothing to do with me, and I wouldn't hold it against you. But I need you to hear it directly from me." Her eyes filled with tears as she gripped Gavin's hand for support. "The first time I met Gavin, he was arresting me," she said quietly. "He tossed me into a grimy holding cell. When I noticed the security camera up in the corner, I broke down, but he showed no reaction. He just shut the door and left me there." She paused, her voice wavering. "But later, something changed. Gavin came back and found me sobbing, and for a moment he just stood there in silence. Then he started yelling, telling me I was throwing my life away. He called me stupid," she continued, letting out a trembling laugh. "No one had ever said that to me before, not so bluntly, and it really got to me. I collapsed on the filthy mattress and cried like a kid. Gavin sat down beside me and asked me one thing. Why? Turning to Gavin again, she spoke even softer. That was the first time I ever told someone my whole story. I held nothing back. I don't even know how long I talked. He just listened, never interrupting. When I finally finished, he squeezed my shoulder, locked the door, and left me there for the night. Her lips quivered as she went on. The next day, he escorted me to court. My lawyer barely did anything, just went through the routine. The judge looked ready to send me straight to prison, but then Gavin stood up. He was still in uniform, completely calm. He told the judge that locking me away wouldn't help. That maybe I had a chance if I got into rehab, she said, a bitter smile flickering. Everyone in the courtroom stared. I had a record. I was definitely guilty. But there was this tough cop speaking up for me. The judge hesitated, then finally offered me a choice. It was either 3 months in rehab or 4 years behind bars if I failed. I didn't hesitate. I chose rehab, she said, glancing at Gavin. She added in a whisper, and I've been clean ever since. She stepped back, her voice turning softer. I'm not on the street anymore, but I still work here. It's the only way I can save for school and look after my daughter. If this changes how you see me, I get it. Before she could say another word, Gavin and I moved in to hug her. As long as you keep fighting, Gavin said with quiet strength, I'll be right here. I nodded, reassuring her. I'm really glad we met, Melissa. You can count on me. Melissa clung to us, tears silently falling down her cheeks. Later that evening, Maris arrived home, her arms stacked with takeout. She leaned over to kiss me, but I sidestepped, reaching for the food bags instead. Perfect timing, I said brightly. We're all hungry. Maris's smile faltered for a moment, a flicker of worry in her eyes. I kept my voice cheerful. Why don't you change clothes while I get everything ready? Her face paled just a bit. She hesitated, then quietly slipped away to the bathroom. Dinner was tense. The kids picked up on the mood and stayed uncharacteristically quiet. Maris barely touched her food, filling the silence with awkward small talk that I mostly ignored. It dawned on me that I was going about this all wrong. Sunday night had mattered to her, and my coldness now would only raise suspicions. I forced a smile. Sorry, I offered. Work's been tough lately. Let's hit reset. How was your day? Relief washed over her, and she dove into a casual recap of errands, minor work gossip, and random news. I nodded and played along, pretending everything was fine. Once Maris had gone to bed, I checked the hidden recorders. There was nothing out of the ordinary. I turned up the heat, changed, and slid into bed, making sure to keep my back to her. Good night, love, she murmured. Without turning, I asked, Why are you bundled up in a flannel sweater? It's not cold tonight. She hesitated before replying, I've just been chilly lately. I rolled over and pulled her into my arms. Her skin felt clammy, damp with sweat. "Are you feeling all right?" I asked, pretending to be concerned. "Not really," she answered in a low voice. My hand brushed her chest, over the spot where a bruise used to be. "I can think of a few ways to warm you up," I suggested. She tensed. "Daniel, I'm sorry," she said. "I'm just really tired." I let her go. "Okay." Maris nestled closer. "Last night was wonderful," she whispered. "But today just wore me out. Wednesday should be easier for me. Let's plan something special then, okay?" "Of course," I replied, my voice flat and empty. Before dawn broke on Tuesday, I'd already slipped out of the house. Midway through the morning, Gavin gave me a call. "Tracker's online," he said, almost offhand. "Got a GPS unit on Parker's vehicle late last night." He messaged over the login credentials. I wasted no time logging in. The GPS showed Parker's car parked motionless across town. Making up an excuse to my boss about a quick errand, I hurried home to check the audio feeds. The first recording nearly knocked the wind out of me. Maris was on the phone with Allison, and there was excitement in her voice. "Allison, I had the most amazing intimacy this weekend," she confessed. Allison smiled slyly. "With Wesley?" she joked. "No," Maris breathed almost wistfully. "It was Daniel, Sunday night. Unbelievable. Better than we've had in ages." "So what was different?" Allison wondered aloud, clearly intrigued. Maris's laugh was soft, almost embarrassed. "Honestly, nothing out of the ordinary," she said. "We didn't try anything new. It just clicked. The way he touched me, held me. It was everything I wanted." "Even better than Wesley?" Allison teased. Maris didn't hesitate. "Absolutely," she went on. "Daniel makes me feel cherished, safe. Wesley, that's all about the physical side. It's exciting, sure, but I could never let Daniel treat me like that." Allison giggled. "It's the thrill, the craziness," she said. Maris's next words came out quieter. "That's why I started seeing Blake Spencer last year." Blake Spencer? Yet another name, another secret. My head spun. Allison, for her part, was hardly innocent either. Briefly, I wondered if I owed it to her husband, Martin, to come clean. Would hearing the truth devastate him the way it was breaking me? But then I remembered the way I'd looked down on Martin, convinced he must have known about Wesley and simply looked away. He deserved honesty too. I resolved that, once I finished with Parker, I'd see that Martin got a copy of what I'd heard. The next clip from early Tuesday had a different mood. Maris picked up the phone, sounding anxious and subdued. "Hey, Allison." Allison picked up on it right away. "Are you all right? You don't sound yourself." Maris exhaled shakily. "Daniel noticed the flannel pajamas and the locked bathroom last night," she whispered. "He questioned me. I lied, said I was cold, but the room was sweltering and I was sweating the whole time." "Do you think he believed you?" Allison's tone was gentle. "He tried to," Maris admitted, "but I wouldn't let him see the bruise. I promised him a special night Wednesday to make up for it, but I don't think he bought it. Afterward, we just lay there, like strangers." Her voice trembled. "And the worst?" she said, voice hollow. "All I could think about was Wesley, not Daniel." That was all the confirmation I needed. I downloaded the audio, snapped my laptop shut, and drove straight to the motel. Parker's car was parked right where the tracker said, outside the rundown building. It was close to noon. I crossed to the bar across the street, scanning for Melissa, but she wasn't working that shift. Through the window, I spotted Parker alone in a booth, absently flipping through the menu. This was my chance. I walked briskly to his room, knocked twice for good measure, and slid my key into the lock. The room was empty. Ignoring the chaos, I headed straight for the desk. His laptop sat open, QuickBooks on display. I plugged in my flash drive, installed a keylogger, and skipped screenshots. I was after email, browsing history, and especially anything related to his finances. If Parker was hiding something shady, I'd find it. Once the logger was set up, I added remote access and disguised a lightweight control tool to blend in as motel software. Nothing that would catch his eye. I hid all the program icons, returned the screen to QuickBooks, and slipped out undetected. Back at the office, I buried myself in work, feeling an odd sense of tranquility. There was something seductive about being in control. That evening, I returned home in surprisingly good spirits, helped the kids with their homework, and chatted with Maris as if everything was normal. She looked uneasy at first, clearly expecting a confrontation, but as I kept up the act, her wariness melted away. Around 10, she yawned and smiled faintly. "I'm going to bed." "All right," I replied, eyes on my laptop. "Just finishing up here. See you in the morning." "Good night," she said softly. "Sleep well," I thought bitterly. "Big day with your lover coming up." I still had a mountain of material to sift through, recordings, spyware data, intercepted calls, but I decided to pause. Instead, I focused on downloading footage from Maris's dashcam, slipping the recorder back in her car when I was done. By the time I finally made it to bed, Maris was either asleep or doing a convincing job of pretending. I perched on the edge of the mattress, mind racing about what tomorrow might bring. Wednesday dawned with Maris up before me, which actually worked to my advantage. The thought of her sneaking off for another affair twisted my stomach. Knowing proof was close only made it harder. When I finally made it downstairs, she was already plating breakfast, looking especially put together. She greeted me with a dazzling smile. "Right on time, love," she said brightly. She welcomed me with a buoyant, "Morning!" Her tone was upbeat, but I responded with a muted grunt, my attention fixed on pouring coffee. Her smile faded a notch. "You're not usually this grouchy," she observed, attempting lightness. I just shrugged, replying with a flat, "Guess you finally know what most mornings are like for me." She blinked, caught off guard for a second, but masked it with an awkward chuckle. The kids shuffled into the kitchen, and she quickly switched to her usual cheerful chatter about school plans and errands. I stayed quiet, noticing the worried looks she kept darting in my direction. When she set my breakfast down, she paused, concern etching her features. "Daniel, is something bothering you?" I managed another indifferent shrug. "Hard to say," I replied. Then, on impulse, I pulled her into a rough embrace. She softened instantly, her body sinking into mine, her head pressed to my chest. "I love you," I murmured against her hair. "My life doesn't make sense without you. There's no one else I want beside me at night." She drew in a sharp breath, her heart pounding against me. "Of course, Daniel," she whispered back, voice thick with feeling. "I love you, too." "You'll understand how much later," I said, abruptly letting her go. Without another word, I snatched my keys and left the house. I drove straight to the motel, downloaded the surveillance footage, and made it back before 9 a.m., my thoughts spinning. How was I supposed to act normal with what I was about to uncover? As the files copied to my laptop, I paced the living room, nerves jangling. The thought of facing Maris that night made me sick. I decided to start with Parker's email history. In a few hours, I had pieced together exactly who he was. He was running 3 companies, all hiking up costs for military, corporate, and government contracts. Parker also had another game. He was seeing 5 different women at once, and Maris was one of them. I archived his QuickBooks data and snagged his passwords with the keylogger I'd previously installed. 6 company credit cards stood out, full numbers exposed in his financial logs. Then I combed through his phone logs. One call in particular jumped out, a heated exchange with someone from the base about repeated serial numbers in shipments. Parker was clearly aggravated. "Just deal with it," he snapped. "This new audit process is a disaster." Another conversation peeled back more layers. A supplier was practically begging for a deal. Parker cut him off coldly. "5,000 in cash gets you 100 grand in work. Raise your rates by 2% to make it back. The supplier hesitated. How am I supposed to get you the money? I'll give you the place, Parker answered icily. Do it in 48 hours, and your contract is yours. But the call that shook me most was with someone from the base's procurement team, passing Parker secret bidding info, outright insider trading. Then there were the personal calls. Hearing Maris's voice, soft, almost coy, hit me harder than I expected. Even with everything I'd learned, hearing her like that was painful. I organized everything methodically. One folder for Maris, another for Parker, complete with every video, audio file, document, and backup. It was time to fill Gavin in. When he answered, I laid it all out for him. He listened in silence, then exhaled heavily. Daniel, he finally said, this isn't enough for a conviction, but it does help a lot. We've been tracking problems at the base for months. Missing stock, repeated serial numbers, junk materials. You have to see some of this in person. Can you come to my office? No, I answered. Meet me here, 3 a.m. We'll go through everything, then drown it out over dinner. His tone shifted. I'm on driving duty. You're drinking, Gavin said. Deal, I agreed. My plan was simple. Get loaded with Gavin, avoid Maris, and let the consequences wait. But the real world had other ideas. By 1 p.m, when Maris was supposed to see Wesley, I tried her cell, but got voicemail. Figures. I left a quick message. Going to Gavin's, back late. With time to spare, I went over more footage. Monday's recording caught Parker greeting a woman with a kiss. They barely made it through the door before undressing each other. I archived that segment. Tuesday? He hooked up with 2 different housekeepers, one in the morning, one later. I saved those files too. At 3 a.m., Gavin arrived at my place. We spent hours digging through all the evidence, drinking until the night and morning blurred together. That was the last thing I remembered clearly. When I woke up on Thursday, it was nearly 9. My head throbbed, and the house was oddly silent. On the kitchen table was a curt note. Since you were too drunk to set your own alarm, don't count on me to do it. Figure it out yourself. I let out a rough laugh. An irritated Maris was easier to keep my distance from. I called in sick and headed back to the motel to grab the surveillance file I'd put off watching. On the way home, Gavin called, his voice tight and urgent. The inquiry's moving at lightning speed, he informed me. The supplier who'd paid off Parker had now consented to act as an informant. We had already pieced together the method Parker and his associates used to execute their thefts. The commander in charge had received a draft of our findings. He paused. It wouldn't be long before military police would be searching Parker's office, his motel suite, and his residence. Be sure to erase all traces of the keyloggers, he cautioned. Already handled, I assured him. He nodded approvingly. The search is slotted for roughly 10 days from now. Can you hold off on confronting Maris until after that? He pressed. I was about to agree when Gavin blindsided me with something I wasn't expecting. The mole feeding Parker information? The leak was coming from purchasing. Suddenly, Maris was under suspicion. I almost burst out laughing at the suggestion. Maris, implicated in this? It was ridiculous. She wouldn't steal so much as a dime. But then the doubt crept in. Hadn't I once thought she could never cheat on me either? I swallowed my frustration and told him I'd check in the next day. As soon as I was home, I loaded the motel surveillance footage onto my laptop. I sped through hours of footage, scanning for the timestamp, 12:30 p.m. My heart pounded as I pressed play. Parker appeared first, swinging the door wide open. Moments later, Maris entered. Without missing a beat, she wrapped her arms around him, and the two kissed with reckless abandon. "Be gentle this time," she murmured against his lips. In seconds, their clothes littered the floor, and they tumbled onto the bed. My vision blurred with tears. That Thursday evening dragged on in a haze of aching silence. With the kids gone, Maris and I circled each other in the house like strangers barely making eye contact. When everyone had finally gone to bed, I retrieved the recorder from her car and scrolled through the latest audio files. Then I heard it. Allison's voice. "So, how'd it go?" she asked, sounding eager. "Wesley was all right," Maris answered with a sigh. "He can be a bit rough, but he always looks forward to our time together." "And Daniel?" Allison pressed. "Nothing to report," Maris replied in a flat tone. "He got drunk with Gavin, staggered home reeking of whiskey, and collapsed without a word." Allison chuckled. "Bad timing?" she teased. "No," Maris muttered. "I basically pleaded with him last night. Even this morning I told him I'd wear him out. He didn't so much as blink, just walked out without a goodbye. Do you think he's catching on?" Maris snorted. "Not possible. I only see Wesley when Daniel's tied up at work. If anything, Daniel's just sulking because we've barely touched each other recently. Maybe this is his way of punishing me." I saved the audio, shaking my head grimly. She could believe whatever made her feel safe. It only made things simpler for me. That night, she brushed past me several times, her touches lingering, maybe too much. I remained cold. When I finally got into bed around 2 in the morning, she was already fast asleep, snoring quietly. "Sorry, Allison. You missed the mark." The next morning, I skipped breakfast. After work, I picked up my organic detection kit and swung by the motel for the latest surveillance files. Back home, I encrypted the footage and ran the tests. Positive. No shock there. Watching those videos felt like inflicting wounds on myself. Then a scene froze me in place. Melissa, the bartender, my friend, walking into Parker's room. Parker handed her a fat envelope of cash, and without hesitation, they went to the bed together. "Melissa?" I just sat there, stunned. 2 more videos hit even harder. One showed Maris laughing on the phone, flirting with Parker, and arranging to meet up. The last clip was the final blow. Maris arrived at Parker's door, pulled him into a passionate kiss, and then dropped to her knees, wordless, detached. There was no affection, just a cold, transactional efficiency. I organized every file into neatly labeled folders, then called Gavin at once. "We need to talk. It's urgent." "Come by my place," he suggested. "Can't risk it. Maris could show up at any moment," I countered. "Let's meet at your office." 10 minutes later, I handed him a flash drive. 3 key videos, I said. "The first one's rough. I'll be waiting outside." An hour dragged by before Gavin slid into the passenger seat beside me, looking pale and shaken. "Bar," he said quietly. "We need to see Melissa." Melissa was already behind the counter when we arrived. She spotted us, and while she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. Without a word, she poured 2 gin and tonics, hugged Gavin, and gave me a quick squeeze on the hand. "Hey guys," she said, her voice too bright to be real. The cheerfulness sounded fragile, forced. Gavin got straight to the point. "Melissa, what's going on?" he asked, his tone urgent. Her face crumpled instantly. "You were right, Gavin," she whispered. "I saw something I shouldn't have. That's why I'm quitting the bar. I can't afford to get mixed up in all of this." My gut twisted as Melissa's voice turned sharp and bitter. So much for the nursing career. That hope had crashed and burned. Now, survival was the only thing on the table. "Like hell it was," Gavin and I said almost in unison. Melissa's eyes widened, startled. "You fought too hard to quit now," Gavin insisted, gripping her hand. "From the minute I cuffed you, you've been clawing your way forward. There's no way we're letting you toss that away." I nodded, resolute. "We'll figure it out." "School's not off the table," I reminded her. Melissa's gaze bounced between Gavin and me, tears threatening to spill. "I'm not worthy of friends like you," she murmured. "But you can't save me." I let out a soft laugh. "Doesn't matter. You don't have a choice. We're in this as a team." A shaky laugh escaped her lips, small and rough but genuine. For the first time that evening, the air in the room felt lighter, even though we all understood the hardest part hadn't passed yet. Near midnight, I finally got up to head for bed. Before we parted ways, Gavin caught me alone and said he'd make some calls, maybe get Melissa a job in the base purchasing office. Word was, a few openings were coming up soon. Saturday crawled by. Maris and I barely spoke all day. When movie night rolled around, she wedged herself between the kids, avoiding the seat next to me. That sly little smile on her lips told me everything. She thought she was coming out on top. She called it a night early, leaving me with nothing but my thoughts and the recorders. Most of the new files were a snooze, until I noticed a fresh email from Parker. Thanks for Friday. Looking forward to Wednesday. Sunday was no better, slow and suffocating. That night, I walked in on Maris still half-dressed behind the bathroom door, doing her best to keep me from seeing her. She knew the truth. Our marriage was beyond fixing. She got into bed with a thud, making her displeasure obvious. I didn't react. With a deep sigh, she turned away from me. Monday afternoon, Gavin checked in with an update. "Everything's a go," he said. "The raid happens next Monday. Think you can sit tight until then?" "We can't risk Parker catching wind," he added. "Yeah," I agreed. "I'll tell Maris I've got a work trip from Wednesday to Sunday." "Smart move," Gavin said. "Keep things normal." I didn't wait. Immediately booked a room right above Parker's for 5 nights. At dinner, I dropped the news like it was nothing. Flying out Wednesday morning, I told them as I ate. "I'll be back Sunday night." Jasmine frowned. "Another trip? You just traveled last month." "Yeah, Dad," Travis said. "Do you really have to go?" I shrugged. "Work's work. Wish I could stay." Maris's face stayed blank, not a hint of emotion or concern. Tuesday dragged on endlessly. I packed a small bag and, when everyone was asleep, went through the recorders again. One conversation grabbed my attention, Maris talking to Allison. "Daniel's ruining everything," Maris snapped. "Daniel or Wesley?" Allison asked, confused. "Daniel," Maris growled. "It's either fighting or silence. Now he's ditching me from Wednesday to Sunday. How am I supposed to manage both of them?" "Geez," Allison sighed. "Maris, forget the whole double life. Fix your marriage before it crashes and burns." "I know," Maris replied, exhausted. "If he'd just stop being so difficult, I'd make things work. Why does it all have to be so hard?" Unbelievable. Somehow I was the villain in her story. Typical. Still, I saved the recording. Wednesday morning, I left like any other day, headed to work, and checked into the motel by noon. I set up 2 laptops on the table, one to monitor the live feeds, the other for recording everything. Right at 1 p.m., Maris's car pulled up. I watched as she grabbed her laptop and went straight to Parker's room. Switching to another feed, I saw her knock. Parker opened the door, grinning, and greeted her with a kiss before she slipped inside. "Hold on," Maris said, heading for the desk. "I need to check my email first." They worked quietly for about 10 minutes. Then, closing her laptop, she smiled wide. "All set." Parker wasted no time. "Now for the real reason you're here." Clothes hit the ground quickly. I muted the sound, sick to my stomach, and focused on the second laptop, remotely accessing their devices while they were otherwise occupied. It wasn't until 5 p.m. that they started moving again, giving me almost 4 uninterrupted hours. As they finally stirred, I logged off, leaving the live stream running. Maris glanced at the clock and shook Parker awake. "Wesley, it's after 5. We dozed off, barely touching the edge of real sleep. He shifted, blinking away the last remnants of drowsiness. "Damn it," he groaned softly. "I told my wife I'd be home for dinner tonight." Maris smacked his forearm, more playful than angry. "Oh, don't start bringing her up now," she protested, rolling her eyes. "I already get more than enough about your home life." He laughed, drawing her closer with an affectionate tug. You know you're part of my story, too, he joked, a sly grin on his face. Maris's expression melted a little. I'm sorry, she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. I do care about my family, but sometimes jealousy gets the better of me. Parker gently combed his hand through her hair. I like the fantasy that you belong to me, he breathed. Maris managed a sad, fleeting smile. I picked you tonight, she replied quietly. But I love my husband. I can't risk losing everything at home. I need to set things right. Parker nodded, his agreement slow and somber. Same here, he admitted. My family means everything. Rising stiffly, he winced, stretching his shoulders. Ugh, my back is killing me, he complained. Maris's eyes widened in shock as she caught sight of his back. Oh, Wesley, I scratched you. I didn't realize, she gasped, guilt etched across her face. Parker scowled at his reflection in the mirror. Damn, Maris, you really went to town, he muttered. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. We lose ourselves sometimes. Looks that way, he said quietly, struggling into his shirt despite the pain. Let's get dressed. I have to head out, he added, more to himself than her. They hurried to get ready. Parker kissed her cheek, squeezed her side, and whispered, See you soon, gorgeous. Maris returned the gesture with a soft kiss before slipping away. From my vantage point, I watched her make her way to her car, moving like someone finishing a long, exhausting shift. Only I knew the truth, and I intended for her to pay the price. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur. I managed my regular job while juggling side gigs, every task moving me closer to the detonation I was preparing. Thursday afternoon, I intercepted a conversation between Maris and Parker. Wesley, Maris's voice was strained. This has been a good run, but I can't go on. What are you talking about? Parker shot back. Why now? This is spiraling out of control, Maris said, voice firm. Daniel's been distant, but I can't wreck my marriage for this. We're done. They argued back and forth for a few minutes, before Parker relented with a weary sigh. All right, he said. Wesley, you call me? No, Maris replied, almost tenderly. Goodbye, Wesley. She hung up, leaving him no chance to answer. By late Friday, I'd set everything in motion. I moved vital files, wiped every trace from the logs, and disabled the monitoring tools. Before logging off, I accessed Maris's system through Parker's, making sure the digital trail pointed directly to the motel Wi-Fi. For the finishing touch, I forwarded all of Parker's current bid documents to Maris's company email. To an investigator, it would look like Maris had leaked confidential data. Sunday afternoon, the house was silent when I got home. I collected all the audio recorders, erased every file, and boxed them up, including the one I'd stashed in Maris's car, meant for Gavin. Once I'd packed everything away, I poured myself a stiff drink, hoping it would steady my nerves. Soon after, Jasmine and Maris came home from shopping. Travis arrived to help them carry in groceries, and the evening passed as if nothing was amiss. No one asked about my so-called work trip. Monday morning found me distracted at my desk. At 11 a.m., the phone rang, our family doctor's receptionist, sounding more serious than usual. Mr. Anderson? She said, tension in her voice. Dr. Brandon needs to see you urgently. My gut twisted. Is something wrong? She paused, then replied, He'll explain. Can you come in right away? I'll be there, I said, grabbing my keys. Dr. Brandon's expression was grave as I entered his office. Daniel, we need to run a few tests, he said, urgency clear in his tone. Tests? What for? I demanded, impatience rising. He removed his glasses and sighed deeply. Your wife came in earlier feeling ill, he explained. The results show 3 sexually transmitted diseases. I sat, stunned. She claimed you were her only partner, he said cautiously. So we assumed you were the source. I barely recognized the sound of my own voice. Test me right now. The staff couldn't meet my gaze as they prepared the samples. The nurse drew my blood with barely concealed frustration. An hour later, Dr. Brandon returned, shaking his head in disbelief. Daniel, your results are clear. I apologize. Your wife wasn't truthful. I exhaled, anger simmering just beneath the surface. Thank you, doctor, I said, teeth clenched. We haven't slept together in weeks. Now I know the reason. He handed me the paperwork as my phone vibrated. It was Jasmine calling. Excuse me, doctor, I said, picking up immediately. Jasmine? What's happening? Jasmine's voice wavered, thick with pain. Dad, Mom told us you were unfaithful, and that you infected her with an STD. How could you do that? I squeezed my phone until my knuckles turned white. Jasmine, please, I'm at the clinic right now. Even though my insides churned, my words stayed even. I'm healthy. Here, let me put Dr. Brandon on. Dr. Brandon immediately took the phone from my hand, his tone brisk. Hello, Jasmine. This is Dr. Brandon. Your father's results are negative. He didn't give your mother any disease. The silence on the other end stretched out. Then, quietly, I heard Jasmine begin to sob. I'm so sorry, Dad, she managed between tears. The conviction she'd had earlier pierced deeper than anything else. It's all right, sweetheart, I soothed her. Tell Travis what's really going on, but don't confront your mother. Not yet. I'll be home soon. At the front desk, the receptionist wordlessly slid my test results to me. As I turned to leave, she hesitated, then pushed an extra envelope across the counter. I may have made a mistake, she said, a small, understanding smile flickering. Your wife's paperwork was mixed in. I understood right away. Maris wouldn't get much compassion when she returned. Pulling up to the house, I noticed unfamiliar cars crowded the curb. Maris's parents had already arrived, just in time. Inside, the tension was palpable. My father-in-law's booming voice reverberated through the house. You son of a bitch, he bellowed. You slept around and gave my daughter a disease. I'll kill you. He loomed over me, a lifetime of hard labor carved into his massive frame. I had only moments before things escalated. I stepped forward, locking eyes with him. If your accusations were true, I said evenly, I wouldn't stop you from hitting me. But they aren't. He looked thrown, uncertainty flickering across his face. Prove it. Right now. In silence, I held out the documents. He read them once, then again, slower. Maris's weeping echoed behind him, growing desperate. When he finally looked up, shock etched every feature. You're clear, he whispered, voice rough. He turned to Maris, slowly piecing it together. My daughter. She's the one with the STD. Someone else gave it to her. He shook his head, grief creeping into his voice. She lied. She's the one who cheated. That's right, I replied quietly. We haven't touched each other in weeks. That's why my results are clean. He clenched the papers, his hands shaking, veins standing out in rage and regret. Daniel, I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. I'm sorry. I appreciate you listening, I said. My marriage might be finished, but at least the truth is out. The weight of everything seemed to crush his shoulders. We should talk, he started. I interrupted, grabbing his shirt and shoving him against the table. No, we do this my way. She's your daughter, but she's my wife. She's the one who dragged you, and our kids, into this chaos. Jasmine called me, sobbing. I don't even know what Travis is thinking right now. I let go of him and stepped back. You're only here because Maris brought you, but this is my family. Stay out of it. Got it? He bristled, but after a moment, he nodded stiffly. Okay, Daniel. Got it. Together, we walked into the living room. Maris lost control the instant she saw me, her screams cutting through the house. Her mother yelled at me too, their voices clashing like a storm. In a corner, Travis sat with his head in his hands, tears silently running down his cheeks. Jasmine broke away from her grandfather and rushed to me, clutching me tightly. "I love you, Dad," she said fiercely. Travis hesitated only a moment before standing and wrapping his arms around me too. Both of them held onto me like they'd never let go. In the background, Maris howled, and her mother hurled blame. Jasmine's hand brushed against the papers I still held. "Is this the evidence?" she asked, her tone sharp with anger. I nodded once. Without hesitation, she took the documents and drew Travis close. Together they read, "Daniel Anderson, all tests negative. Maris Anderson, positive for 3 sexually transmitted diseases." Their eyes met above the pages, and they hugged me even harder. Jasmine turned, her face hard as granite. "Mom," she snapped, "how can you still accuse Dad? He never betrayed us. You did." Maris collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably. Unmoved, Jasmine handed the reports to her grandmother, whose hands shook as she read. The truth hit her like a tidal wave. Maris looked up, panic in her eyes. "Why is everyone making me out to be the monster? This isn't fair," she wailed. Jasmine stepped forward, raising the documents between them like a shield. "You lied, Mom. You cheated on Dad. You tore this family apart." Maris choked, rage contorting her face. She lunged at Jasmine, hand raised to strike, but Jasmine reacted first. She caught her mother's wrist, her grip unyielding, her eyes glacial. "Don't even try," she hissed, voice low and dangerous. "You lost the right to touch me the day you chose to shatter our family." The room froze. Jasmine stood unmoving, though her voice trembled at the edges. "You'll always be my mother, and I'll always care about you," she said, her tone steady. "But you poisoned us against Dad with your lies. I can never forgive you for that." Before anyone could process what was happening, she whirled around and pulled me into a crushing embrace. Travis came next, his arms around me, wordless. His quiet carried more weight than any outburst. Across the room, Maris remained rigid, eyes wide and petrified. "Please, kids," she pleaded, her voice cracked and trembling. "Your father gave it to me weeks ago." Her desperation spilled over, words tumbling in a frantic rush. "He must have gotten treatment and kept it a secret. I begged him to stay close, but he always turned away from me." Her voice rose, tight with panic. "I never cheated on him. He's twisting things, trying to make me the villain here. I've always been loyal. Always," she insisted, voice quivering with the strain. The room was heavy with silence, suffocating in its intensity. My father-in-law's jaw set, his hands balling up in fury. I realized the time for waiting was over. Pushing past everyone, I squared up to Maris. "This is your last chance," I said, my voice icy. "Tell the truth now, or I'll reveal what I have." For an instant, her lips shook. Then, trapped, she snapped back, her voice high and shrill with anger. "You have no right! You're bluffing! There's nothing to show! Go on, prove it!" she shouted. I stood my ground, with pleasure. Crossing to the far side of the room, I opened a cabinet and retrieved my laptop. As I hooked it up to the television, I caught the briefest flash of dread in Maris's eyes. She knew what was about to unfold. Months earlier, while Maris had been seeing Parker, I'd used one of his company cards to buy a domain and set up a website. The snare was ready. Locking eyes with Maris, I asked, "You told me you ended things with Wesley last Thursday, didn't you?" She gave me a look of contempt. "You're out of your mind. I've only ever loved you." Without raising my voice, I opened my email and cast it onto the television screen. "Recognize him? Wesley Parker?" I said. The blood drained from her face. "No!" She barely breathed. "He sent me this link," I explained, my tone measured. "And guess what? You're the main attraction." I turned to Jasmine and Travis. "Maybe you two should go upstairs for this." Jasmine glared, arms folded. "No! She dragged us into this. We're not leaving." Travis barely glanced at the TV. Dad, if you make us go, I'll just find the site in 2 seconds. I let out a weary sigh. He was right. He'd already memorized the address. Fine, I conceded, clicking on the link. The television glowed blue as the homepage loaded. A cold male voice echoed through the speakers. Welcome to the lovers of Wesley Parker. Maris let out a choking sob as a series of photos began, image after image of different women. Nothing explicit, but the intimacy was unmistakable. The voice went on, here you'll find married women I've seduced. Every encounter captured on camera. Like what you see? Message me for the uncut footage. None of them know they're being filmed. When the 4th photograph appeared, the whole room seemed to stop breathing. There was Maris, in her typical gray business suit. The mouse hovered over her picture as the voice declared, introducing Maris. Mid-50s, voluptuous. Tons of material here. Click to preview. The tension was unbearable. Maris stood motionless, colorless, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Her lips moved in silence. Staring at her own image, she finally whispered, No, this can't be real. I clicked her picture. 8 video thumbnails appeared, each labeled with dates and brief descriptions. Maris's eyes grew huge with shock. She recognized every setting, every event. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed onto the couch, racked with sobs. Her mother rushed to her side while her father stood, paralyzed by shock. Travis's fists clenched tightly at his sides. Jasmine's expression twisted into fury. I think that's enough, I murmured, stepping back. Jasmine's response was immediate and seething. We're not done here, she shot back. Anyone can fake a video. I want to see the truth. Before I could react, she grabbed the mouse and clicked on the first video. It loaded, and the room filled with the sound of heavy breathing and whispered words. Jasmine recoiled, covering her mouth with her hand. Oh my God, she gasped, voice shaking. How could you? She stopped, overwhelmed. Travis was silent, his whole body trembling. Maris buried her face in her mother's shoulder, consumed by grief. Jasmine, determined, clicked on the second video. Maris's cries intensified, reality pressing down on her relentlessly. Jasmine reached for a third, but I stopped her with a gentle touch. That's enough, I said quietly. She hesitated, then relented, tears running down her cheeks. She fell into my arms, sobbing. Travis joined us, hugging me tightly, his body shuddering with emotion. Maris's parents stood in stunned silence, helpless. Maris clung to her mother, utterly broken. After what felt like an endless silence, I finally spoke. Why, Maris? My words barely audible. Struggling to breathe through her tears, Maris tried to reply. I'm at a loss for words. Daniel, I'm so sorry. Truly I am. I managed, barely above a whisper, as I pressed the car keys into Travis's palm. Kids, why don't you get out and stretch for a bit? Dinner's on me tonight. Need some cash? I offered. Travis gave a slight shake of his head. We're all right. We'll be back soon, Jasmine said softly, wiping away her tears. Just have to grab my bag. Once they'd gone, I turned to face Maris and her parents. I'll be back in half an hour. Maris, we need to talk. You too, I added, looking at her parents. Don't go far. She'll need your support. I wandered aimlessly through the streets, the chill biting at me but helping me focus my thoughts. When I returned, the house was eerily still. Everyone sat rigid at the kitchen table, looking pale and stricken. Maris stood up as soon as I entered. Daniel, she said, voice raw and shaky, eyes swollen from crying. Thank you for coming back, she said quietly. I nodded, gesturing for her to sit down. There's something even bigger we have to deal with, I told her, keeping my voice low. She went even paler. Leaning over the table, I continued. Parker was taken into custody this afternoon, I said, my tone unyielding. She inhaled sharply, stunned. Gavin's investigation uncovered everything: fraud, extortion, Illegal kickbacks. The entire operation is unraveling. A heavy silence pressed down on us. Maris blinked furiously, trying to stop the tears from coming. Her parents sat frozen, faces grim and tight. His office, his businesses, even the motel, they were all raided. They also arrested 2 more, one from logistics, another from procurement. I got to my feet, holding her gaze. There's something else. Gavin found emails sent from your account, messages that leaked confidential bids and contracts straight to Parker. She recoiled, eyes wide with fear. That isn't true, she sobbed. I never did that. Her mother's voice broke, thick with hurt. How can we believe you after everything? Maris broke down, racked with sobs. I rubbed my face, exhaustion overtaking me. The only reason you're not already in a cell is because you're my wife, I said. Gavin bent the rules to give you a little time. If you're not in his office first thing tomorrow, they'll have a warrant for your arrest. I leaned in, lowering my voice even more. If you're guilty, this will be federal. She let out a scream that pierced the silence. I didn't do it. Yes, I lied. I cheated. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, she gasped, fighting for breath. Maybe I ought to go to jail for everything else, but not for this. I swear I never leaked anything. I watched her, searching for any hint of a lie. Maris, I said slowly, did you ever take your work laptop to the motel? She broke eye contact, shame flooding her features. I did, she admitted. Sometimes I worked there pretending they were personal days. I'm so sorry, Daniel. My jaw clenched. Personal days. Cover for betrayal. She winced, acknowledging the truth. Did you ever leave your laptop unattended? Still logged in? Connected to the company network? While you showered or slept? She seemed to stop breathing. Yes, she whispered. Oh God, yes. I never imagined how stupid I was. Without wasting a second, I grabbed her laptop, switched it on, and immediately turned off the Wi-Fi. Time was running out. One of the last things I'd done remotely was queue up an automatic email blast, an attempt to set up Parker. Luckily, by disabling the internet, those emails hadn't been sent. Feigning confusion at the login screen, I asked, "What's your password?" Her face twisted with guilt. Parker, she confessed in a whisper. The silence between us was suffocating, her betrayal almost too much to bear. He installed remote access, I muttered. He could see everything. Maris looked up, panic in her eyes. He set me up, she said, voice trembling. He didn't just want me, he wanted it all. I hunched over the laptop, pretending to search through files. Good thing I shut down the internet, I said. There's a scheduled task here, set to email everyone you know, family, colleagues, friends. Maris collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Oh my God, he's punishing me. Because I ended things. Her mother gathered her in a tight embrace, murmuring empty comforts. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of everything. This might be enough, I said at last. It could be just enough to get you out of this. 3 sets of eyes snapped toward me. Maris's father, who'd seemed seconds away from hitting me earlier, now looked more confused than enraged. This is concrete proof that Parker had access from the outside, I explained. It's likely he engineered the leaks himself. If you're being honest, the system activity logs will show his IP address during the transfers. Maris quietly wiped away her tears, offering a small, silent nod. I caught a glint of optimism breaking through her exhaustion, but I wasn't done. There's something else, I continued. While I was inside Parker's system, I set up monitoring tools. I also restored all his private recordings to his own hard drive. As far as the authorities will see, it'll appear that he personally made all those recordings, I said. Her father inhaled sharply. Wait, are you telling me those videos are now legitimate evidence? I nodded. Parker isn't just in trouble for embezzlement and fraud. He'll be facing charges for unlawful surveillance, blackmail, and privacy breaches too. I leaned back, letting the magnitude of it settle on the room. And I uploaded every recording of his threats. Gavin already has copies. Parker's game is finished. Months passed, and Parker was found guilty on a long string of counts: fraud, extortion, racketeering. The list seemed endless. The IRS soon launched a new inquiry into his concealed earnings, and his wife filed divorce papers less than 2 days after he reported to prison. 1 week after the verdict, Gavin and I met again at the bar, where Melissa used to work her shifts. She'd since landed a job in base procurement, finally allowing her to take night classes for medical school. I absent-mindedly stirred my gin and tonic, watching the ice tumble around the glass. "I still owe you for that surveillance equipment I borrowed," I said with a crooked smile. Gavin just shook his head. "Forget it. Besides, we both dropped $1,500 at the casino yesterday. Let's call it even." I chuckled and took a sip. Not as good as Melissa's cocktails, but it'll get us through the night. At that moment, Martin walked in. He looked exhausted, eyes sunken, posture sagging, the unmistakable look of someone who hadn't slept properly in days. I'd told him where to find me if he ever needed to talk. Sooner or later, the truth always catches up. Without a word, he sank into the seat across from me. I slid a flash drive across the table toward him. "It's all on there," I murmured. "Emails, recordings, videos, every last bit. Maris, Allison, all of it." Martin stared at the drive, silent, then drained half his drink in one gulp. When he finally spoke, his voice was raspy but steady as he addressed Gavin. "Gavin, I need to rent some surveillance equipment." Gavin exhaled, rubbing his temples. And so, the whole cycle began once more. We've reached the end of this first story, but don't go anywhere. A new adventure is right around the corner. Let's jump in. The divorce papers arrived at my workplace on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly at 2:25 p.m. They didn't come to my front door or in the middle of a drawn-out conversation, but right in the heart of the career I'd spent 15 years building. "Delivery for Daniel Mercer," the courier called out, his tone loud enough to draw a few curious glances. He handed over a bulky envelope, a sly, almost sympathetic smile on his lips, as if this sort of bad news was just another stop on his regular route. I opened the envelope with steady hands, though the shaking would follow soon after. For a moment, all I could do was stare at the words stamped across the top: "Petition for dissolution of marriage." It felt as if my chair had tilted beneath me. 12 years together, reduced to clinical statements about splitting assets and negotiating custody. Even our dog, Max, was mentioned, classified as personal property, destined for Monica. At the bottom, I saw her signature, those familiar looping letters that once adorned love notes and birthday cards. Now that handwriting signaled the official end of everything we'd made. "Everything okay, Dan?" My supervisor, Liam, appeared at my cubicle, concern evident on his face. I quickly tucked the papers away. "It's a family matter," I replied, voice low. "I'll need the rest of the afternoon." He didn't question it. After so many years of loyalty, never leaving early, never taking a sick day, I'd earned that leeway. When I reached my car, I just sat there, staring at my hands on the steering wheel, unable to start the engine. My phone buzzed. A message from Monica. "I assume you got the papers. Don't come home tonight. The locks are changed. Your things will be boxed by the weekend. No explanation, no apology, only cold instructions." I eventually turned the key and drove away. Not to the house that had just been taken from me, but to a nearby hotel. It was only after I was alone in that generic room, still tinged with the scent of cleaning agents and someone else's aftershave, that the tremors began. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 43 years old and work as a senior financial analyst for Brighton Consulting. I'm the type who speaks up in meetings only when it matters, whose input is respected. I was the reliable husband, always remembering birthdays and anniversaries, holding Monica's hand through 3 miscarriages, helping her when her businesses failed. I drove her to counseling every Wednesday for 2 years, back when anxiety made it impossible for her to go on her own. Once I'd checked in, I perched on the edge of the bed, trying to trace where it had all unraveled. Monica and I weren't perfect, but I believed our marriage was solid. We'd endured trials that broke other couples. We'd built a life in a Seattle suburb, Saturday hikes, cozy dinners, and shared plans for the future. Looking for answers, I scrolled through our recent messages, searching for red flags I might have missed. The last one, 3 days earlier. Don't wait up. Girls' night out. Before that, a string of last-minute cancellations, missed dinners, vague explanations. When had she turned into someone I barely recognized? The distance crept in quietly, about 3 months ago. Monica started shielding her phone, updating passwords, whispering into calls if I walked by. Shopping bags from upscale stores turned up, and she went on retreats with friends I'd never met. Whenever I asked if she was all right, she brushed me off. Just work stuff, or you wouldn't get it, or simply, I'm fine, Daniel. Stop worrying. The full truth wouldn't come until a week after the divorce filing. I was meeting with Alan Chen, the attorney I'd hired, when he slid a newspaper clipping across the table. Did you know about this? He asked. It was a notice from the state lottery office, dated 3 weeks before Monica served me. Someone had claimed a $4 million prize anonymously. I don't follow, I said. Alan handed me another sheet. The winnings were claimed through an LLC, he explained. We've investigated, Alan continued, pointing to the paperwork. The company is in your sister-in-law's name, but we believe Monica is the real winner. My world seemed to shrink. Monica had hit the jackpot and never breathed a word. She didn't just keep it from you, Alan said, his voice serious. She intentionally hid the money, then filed for divorce and moved the funds offshore. This wasn't a mistake, Daniel. She planned everything. That night, I drove back to what used to be my house, parking on the street opposite. The windows were lit up. There was a silver BMW parked in the drive, one I didn't recognize. I watched a man step out, kiss Monica on the doorstep, and then leave. When I rang the bell, Monica appeared in silk pajamas, more irritated than shocked to see me. You can't be here, she said sharply, blocking my view. Did you win the lottery? I asked quietly. I saw a flash of fear in her eyes before she masked it with icy resolve. Who told you that? She demanded. Just answer me, is it true? I pressed. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, jaw set. And if I did? She shot back. That's none of your business now. We're still married, I reminded her. That money belongs to both of us. Her laughter was colder than anything I'd ever heard from her before. That windfall wasn't ours. It was mine alone. I earned it, if you can call surviving the misery of our marriage earning. Let's be honest. You never offered me anything I'd want to hold on to. She allowed herself a wicked grin and added, You should be grateful. I'll let you have that old car, unless you'd rather I take that off your hands as well. I just stood there, trying to make sense of the malice coming from the woman who once swore she'd face anything at my side. The same person I'd helped through every panic and heartbreak, someone I believed would always be in my corner. Is this about him? I asked, nodding toward the space where her BMW usually sat. Jason? She shrugged, barely feigning interest. He's part of it, she said. He makes me feel alive. You? You're just there. Predictable. Boring. Her eyes narrowed. Are we done here? I have plans to make. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just turned away, her words bouncing around in my head like stones. That night, alone in my hotel room, I started thinking about how to move forward. Sleep didn't come. Instead, I got to work. By morning, I'd arranged 3 appointments, one with Alan Chen for legal advice, another with a forensic accountant who specialized in following money trails, and a third with a private investigator. We need hard evidence, Alan said when I met him the next day. If she used joint funds for that ticket, if there's paperwork connecting her to the LLC, or if we can show she deliberately concealed money, then we have a strong case. Melissa Reyes, the forensic accountant, didn't mince words. Hiding money overseas isn't as foolproof as people think, especially when they don't know what they're doing, she said, flashing a brief, knowing smile. No offense, but amateurs make obvious mistakes. The investigator, a former cop named Frank Dawson, assured me he'd uncover everything: Monica's actions, her involvement with Jason, any ties to the lottery money. For 2 months, I lived a double life. At work, I was still reliable Daniel, though I grew quieter by the day. Divorce changes people, my co-workers murmured when they thought I couldn't hear. But after hours, I became a collector of evidence, compiling every sign of her betrayal. I gathered bank records showing withdrawals from our joint account on the day she bought the ticket. I secured surveillance footage from the convenience store, proof that Monica had used our shared debit card to purchase the lottery ticket. I gathered screenshots of Instagram photos, Monica and Jason at a luxury resort in Mexico, time-stamped during the same weekend she'd told me she was away on business. The biggest breakthrough came from Frank, a series of texts between Monica and her sister Vanessa. The LLC is set up. Once the funds hit, I'll file the paperwork and be free, rich and free. And Daniel? What about him? By the time he catches on, the money will be long gone. Besides, he doesn't have the guts to fight back. Sitting in Frank's office, reading those words, a cold clarity washed over me. The Monica in those messages was a stranger. Or maybe she'd been like this all along and I simply never saw it. In quiet moments between meetings and evidence gathering, memories would surface uninvited. Monica on our wedding day, glowing in her simple white gown, whispering, "You're the one, Daniel. Always you." Monica gripping my arm during storms, trembling with every thunderclap, seeking comfort only I could give. Monica's laughter around our kitchen table as we spun dreams of our future, our forever. Was it all just a performance? Or did something shatter along the way, something I never noticed or tried to fix? Other memories returned, the ones I'd ignored. Her disappointment when I didn't get that promotion 3 years ago. "I thought you wanted more out of life," she'd said, while gravitating toward her wealthier friends. She'd started dismissing our little house as just a stepping stone, even though we'd chosen it together. All the red flags had been there. I just chose not to see them. One night, lying in a hotel bed, I found myself scrolling through old photos. Monica, kneeling next to Max, our rescue shepherd, on the day we brought him home. She'd cried, touched by the dog's immediate trust. "He knows I'll take care of him," she'd said. Now she was threatening to take Max from me, too. I turned off my phone and called Alan. "I want Max," I said, not bothering with small talk. "Whatever else happens, I need my dog." While Monica basked in her new wealth, designer clothes, fancy dinners, weekend getaways with Jason, I stayed focused. I opened a new bank account at a different branch. I made copies of all our financial records. I documented every conversation, every run-in, every scrap of evidence tying her to the lottery money. Melissa charted the path of the cash, from the lottery commission to the LLC, then to an offshore account in the Caymans, and finally into a new account under Monica's name. The paper trail was messy, but impossible to deny. "She got sloppy," Melissa observed. "She moved so frantically to hide the cash that her fingerprints blurred over every note." While she scrambled, Frank was quietly keeping tabs on Monica and Jason, collecting proof of their not-so-secret relationship. "They're hardly bothering to keep things discreet," he told me. "She calls him her partner, and they're openly making plans to buy property in Maui together." "With the money my wife got from the lottery," I replied, my tone dull. Frank gave a slight nod. "Legally, you're entitled to half of that," he reminded me. Just then, Monica's name flashed on my screen with a new message, pressing me to sign away my rights to the house with a quitclaim deed. "It's the least you can do," she wrote. "Think of it as paying me back for all the years you wasted." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message straight to Alan, adding it to the growing pile of evidence. Monica's betrayals only intensified after that. She made a grab for the funds in our shared account, but I had already shielded most of our assets. She attempted to put our timeshare up for sale, conveniently forgetting my signature was required. She even reached out to my employer, accusing me of drug problems and suggesting they look into my job performance. "She's getting desperate," Alan remarked. "She knows something's wrong because you're not reacting the way she expected. When will she realize I'm not resisting her? I'm staying ahead of her?" I asked. Alan gave a tight, knowing smile. "She'll understand when the hearing starts. That's when the trap will spring." The night before the hearing, Frank delivered the final blow, proof that Monica had forged my signature on loan applications, using our house as security to borrow money for her and Jason's Maui escape. Alan shook his head in disbelief when I showed him. "This has crossed the line," he said quietly. "It's not just about hiding money anymore. This is outright fraud." The full depth of Monica's deception didn't reveal itself until we saw the financial statements her lawyer filed with the court. The lottery winnings were nowhere to be found. The offshore accounts didn't exist on paper. The BMW was omitted. Even the loan on our house was left out. Instead, Monica's filings portrayed her as a woman of modest means, entitled to support from her successful, dependable husband. She described herself as emotionally shattered, vaguely hinted at psychological abuse, and demanded not just the house, but also compensation for helping my career. The audacity was stunning. Every statement signed and submitted under oath. "She just handed us everything we need," Alan whispered. On the morning of the hearing, Monica walked into the courthouse in designer heels and a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Jason trailed nearby, face glued to his phone, playing the supportive boyfriend. Neither acknowledged my presence. Before we went inside, Monica's attorney, a sharp, imposing woman in her 50s named Eileen Barrett, approached. "My client is willing to be reasonable," she said crisply. "If Mr. Mercer gives up any claim to the house and its contents, she'll waive spousal support." Alan answered with calm politeness. "We'll let the judge make that decision." In the courtroom, Monica settled in with an air of cool assurance, shooting me a look of manufactured sympathy. I kept my expression unreadable, eyes fixed forward. The stack of evidence, the lies, the forgeries, the trail of deception, rested heavily in the briefcase beside me. Judge Harriet Winters, an austere woman in her 60s, flipped through the files, her frown growing deeper. "Ms. Barrett, your client's financial disclosures appear incomplete, considering her described lifestyle," the judge remarked. "My client has simply exercised prudence, Your Honor," Barrett replied smoothly. "Her husband, on the other hand, has been cashing out assets." Judge Winters looked to Alan. "Mr. Chen, do you have a response?" "Yes, Your Honor," Alan said. "We're prepared to show that Mrs. Mercer has not only omitted significant assets, but has actively concealed them in a calculated attempt to mislead both my client and this court." Alan began laying out our case. He outlined the lottery jackpot, produced official paperwork and security footage, revealed the LLC set up under Vanessa's name, detailed the offshore wire transfers, highlighted the new bank accounts, and showed the forged loan applications, along with the incriminating texts that spelled out Monica's plan to hide assets until after the divorce. With every new detail, Monica's composure crumbled, her face first uneasy, then worried, and finally stricken with panic. Her lawyer leaned in again and again, murmuring advice, but Monica just shook her head in disbelief. When Alan played the security video showing Monica buying the lottery ticket with our shared debit card, she looked ready to collapse. "And further, Your Honor," Alan added, "Mrs. Mercer's sworn statement to this court omits these assets, constituting felony-level fraud." Monica sat frozen, mouth agape, clinging to her attorney's arm and whispering frantically. Judge Winters's gaze turned steely. "Ms. Barrett, did you have knowledge of these undisclosed assets?" Barrett's face had turned ashen. "No, Your Honor, I did not." In view of this evidence, Judge Winters announced, "I am granting a 72-hour emergency order to freeze all accounts associated with Monica Mercer, the LLC under Vanessa Clark, and any offshore holdings linked to either party." Her voice was sharp as she fixed her eyes on Monica. "This court does not tolerate the hiding of marital property, Mrs. Mercer, or the submission of false statements." When the bailiff handed the urgent court order to the filing clerk, I watched Monica deflate into her seat, finally overwhelmed by the reality closing in on her. The divorce dragged out for another 3 months, but after that first day in court, the final result was never really uncertain. Judge Winters, visibly disgusted by Monica's attempt to mislead the court, made her position clear. She awarded me 70% of the lottery winnings, basing her ruling on the fact that the ticket was purchased with money that belonged to both of us during our marriage. The judge called Monica's efforts to conceal the winnings a grave violation of trust, something she refused to overlook. Any claim Monica might have had to alimony was stripped away, and she was ordered to pay back every cent I'd spent on legal fees. Our family home was to be sold, the proceeds divided on the same 70-30 ratio. But what cut Monica deepest wasn't the money. Judge Winters gave me full custody of Max. Given Ms. Mercer's pattern of dishonesty and emotional volatility, the judge ruled it was in the best interest of both my son and the family dog to remain with me. When the last hearing concluded, I stood in the hallway, Max's leash in one hand, the signed decree in the other. Monica approached, her designer wardrobe replaced by simple trousers and a plain blouse, her makeup barely there. She spoke so quietly I could barely hear her. "You've destroyed me. Is this what you wanted?" I took a long look at the woman I once loved, searching for any remnant of the partner I thought I knew, trying to reconcile her with the person who had betrayed me and nearly committed fraud for her own gain. "I didn't destroy anything, Monica," I finally replied. "All I did was reveal the truth." She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "The truth?" Her eyes found mine. "The truth is, I spent the best years of my life on a man who was never enough." I asked, "And what was it you wanted?" She shrugged. "More. Always more." As she turned and walked away, it hit me that she'd never fully understand what she'd lost, and it had nothing to do with money. Everything unfolded in a way you might expect. News of the lottery windfall and Monica's scheme quickly made the rounds, the story turning her into a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition. Local law firms, wary of the scandal, quietly refused to consider her for work, even the paralegal jobs she once held. Jason disappeared the moment the cash was gone, his Maui dreams vanishing along with the frozen accounts. Frank, who still kept in touch with the gossip, later told me Jason had moved on, now dating a real estate agent from Bellevue. Vanessa, meanwhile, found herself facing possible legal trouble for her involvement in the LLC ruse and publicly distanced herself from Monica. "I didn't realize what the company was really about," she told a local blogger, putting all the blame on Monica to save herself. With her career in ruins, her romantic relationship ended, her sister turning away, and her finances devastated by court costs and penalties, Monica eventually moved to Portland to live with her parents. Friends mentioned that her mother now regularly reminded her about the importance of being grateful for what you have, a lesson that colored her new daily life. As for me, I listed the house, there were simply too many memories there, and bought a smaller home near a park for Max to enjoy. Most of my share of the lottery was invested, a portion donated to the animal shelter where we'd adopted Max, and the rest set aside to secure my future. I declined all invitations for interviews and turned down offers for books and documentaries. My life wasn't meant to be a public spectacle. This wasn't a story for entertainment. It was my own experience, and I wanted to take ownership of it again. About a year later, I happened to run into Vanessa at a coffee shop in Seattle. She was in town for work and looked uncomfortable when she spotted me. "Daniel," she greeted me, hesitating near my table. "How have you been?" I asked, gesturing to the empty chair. After a brief pause, she sat down, gripping her coffee tightly. "I want you to know, I didn't realize right away what Monica was up to." "But you figured it out eventually," I responded, without accusation. She nodded, staring at her cup. "She's my sister." She said it was about protecting what she'd won, making sure she got her share. Vanessa looked at me earnestly. "I know that doesn't justify anything." I found myself asking, "How is she?" "She's managing," Vanessa said, choosing her words carefully. "She's working at our dad's office. She's seeing someone new, an accountant, someone dependable." She offered a tentative smile. "She asks about Max now and then." I showed her a recent photo of Max on my phone, his muzzle now flecked with gray but still lively and content. "He looks good," Vanessa said. "You both do." She hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, I think she's sorry, not just for being caught, for all of it." I considered her words as I slipped my phone back in my pocket. Maybe she was right. Maybe Monica had learned something from losing everything. Maybe one day she'd see that the life she once dismissed had actually been full of real value. But that was her journey, not mine. "I should get going," I said, collecting my things. "It was good to see you, Vanessa." "You too, Daniel." She paused, then asked, "Are you happy?" Her question caught me by surprise. Could contentment have awaited me after betrayal, after protracted legal battles, after watching the life I once thought unshakable fall apart? In time, I found my answer. A sense of tranquility had settled within me. For the present, that was enough. As I made my way home, with the gentle glow of the setting sun touching my face and Max trotting cheerfully beside me, the reality became clear in my heart. There was no satisfaction in how things concluded with Monica, no lingering desire to reopen old wounds or continue the conflict. In its own understated fashion, fairness had prevailed. Above all, I had endured. I wasn't unchanged. I knew I'd never give my trust so freely again, but I remained whole. Later that evening, a message appeared on my phone from an unknown number. It was brief. "I'm sorry." There was no need for a name. I instantly knew who it was from. I chose not to reply. Not every chapter needs to be reopened. Some conclusions deserve to stand. Instead, I reached down to scratch Max behind the ears, picked up the book I'd neglected for weeks, and allowed myself to relax into the quiet fulfillment of a life restored. Perfection was never promised. The scars of what had been were still with me. But this life belonged to me now, crafted by my own decisions. And in the end, that mattered more than any material gain ever could. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.